Hi, I'm Andrew Ford. I'm a breaking news reporter here at Florida Today. We're about 4 days into jury selection in the trial of the man accused of shooting Brevard County Sheriff's Deputy Barbara Pill. I'm here again with defense attorney Kepler Funk. It's been a slow process so far, but it's really important. What do you think of the demographics of the people you've seen so far?
Well, that's a good question. Demographics is something that lawyers definitely will consider. Right now, I see pretty much a cross-section of Brevard County as I've experienced it as a trial lawyer over 20-plus years. I think a lot of young lawyers make the mistake of generalizing when we talk about demographics. Age of jurors, gender of jurors. I like to, when I talk to young lawyers, I talk to them about don't generalize demographics. In other words, I have an older white gentleman, therefore he's by very nature a state-oriented juror. I think that's a huge mistake. It's incumbent upon these lawyers, and I think these lawyers will do so. They're going to ask them specifics about their life's experiences. There are many, many older white gentlemen, for example, that have a life experience that would lend him, in my example, to be a fantastic defense juror, for instance. So lumping people into groups, I think, is a big mistake that I don't believe these lawyers, and that's why I said earlier, I was very happy we got the lawyers we did. They're very experienced. They're not going to be making those mistakes. So demographics is something we'll look at when we know with more specificity about who these people are and what life experiences they've had. It is important. That's a good question. I just think it's maybe premature to talk about that with how it may affect the trial.
Sure. You mentioned that we're going to get into a little bit more detail about who these people are. Right now, we're trying to gather 41 people for the second part of this process. Right. What is that second part?
Well, you got to remember now, this initial phase, so to speak, of jury selection is really learning who has a hardship, who can't sit for 5 weeks, either from their work perspective or they have physical problems, all of the issues that you've reported on accurately and correctly, and also those that have the views of the death penalty or fixed-formed opinions. So that's all we're going through right now. We have a whole giant kind of second phase, if you will, where each side, the state and the defense, are going to be asking about those life experiences. Remember now, for example, if a juror says, you know what, I was a victim of a crime, or my mom was, or my relative involving a firearm, that may be a reason to strike that juror for cause. So, yeah, it's nice to say we want 41, but my prediction is we're going to need a lot more jurors to go through before we actually see 15 people seated as a jury for this case.
All right, the law provides for a death penalty, and they're asking jurors if they can follow that law. Right. But you raised an interesting point about whether this is truly a jury of peers if they're excluding folks who don't agree with the death penalty.
Yeah, it's one of my kind of pet peeves, and my law partners are tired of hearing me rant about it. But here it is in a nutshell. Here's my problem in a nutshell. Is we ask these jurors, and they're supposed to be a jury of our peers, right? That's what the Constitution guarantees. Well, one of the first questions the court asks is this. How do you feel about the death penalty? And let's say that one of Mr. Bradley's peers says I'm opposed to the death penalty, that I don't think the government should ever participate in executing one of its citizens. Well, that person, the way our system is set up right now, is prohibited from sitting for the first part of the trial. Remember, the first part of the trial has nothing to do with sentencing, right? It's whether or not the government's proved their case beyond a reasonable doubt. Is Mr. Bradley guilty or not? Or guilty of something lesser than first-degree murder or not? Well, what does your view on the death penalty have to do with whether you, as a peer, a citizen peer of mine, if I'm Mr. Bradley, what's that have to do with whether or not you can find me and sit as a competent juror, whether you can find me guilty or not? I think it's wrong. I'm not sure I have the solution. I know my solution is we abolish the death penalty. I know that's not popular. I recognize that. I have these discussions with my prosecutor friends all the time. I respect that opinion that they have. I can tell you it would save a lot of heartache, and I think in this situation, fairness if we did away with it.
All right, Kepler, thanks very much for being with me here today. Stay tuned as we follow this trial gavel to gavel. We'll do more updates like this.